worried about changes to their rights.
Hello, we've got warm sunshine across much of the Arabian Peninsula. No great surprise there then, but look, temperatures getting up to 28 Celsius. A few days ago we were struggling to get into the low 20s, so pleasantly warm weather to come through Monday. A touch cooler as we go on into Tuesday. Highs here in Doha of around 25 degrees, which still isn't too bad really. We've got some rain which is making its way away from Kuwait. It's running across Iran, maybe seeing some wet weather and some wintry weather coming through Afghanistan, sneaking its way across those northern sections of India. But for much of India, the wetter weather is just around the east coast. We'll see some heavy showers also affecting a good part of Sri Lanka once again over the next day or two. Heavy showers continue to plague Madagascar, but I think the wettest of the weather will be across northern parts of Madagascar. Another 100 millimetres of rainfall possible here over the next 24 hours. Joining up with the heavy rain through northern Mozambique, southern Tanzania, pushing right the way into Zambia. South Africa, on the other hand, is largely fine and dry. Temperatures typically around the mid-20s. We've got some pleasant sunshine to come too into northern parts of Argentina. Buenos Aires at around 30 Celsius, but heavy showers continue for southeastern parts of Brazil, with a chance of further flooding to come into Bolivia, and we still have that very heavy rain for western parts of the Amazon basin around Peru and Ecuador.
Welcome back. A reminder of our top stories here on Al Jazeera. Anti-government demonstrators in Bahrain have spent another night camping out in the capital, Manama. Hundreds of people are still at the Pearl roundabout following the withdrawal of the army. Hundreds of Yemenis have also continued demonstrating against the country's president. Anti-government protesters camped overnight outside Sana'a University on Sunday, despite President Ali Abdullah Saleh's offer for talks. And Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi's son is proposing talks as pro-reform unrest has spread to the capital, Tripoli. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi has appeared on state television to say his father remains in charge with the army's backing.
We will create a new system that all of us agree on. We will create a new Libya, a Libya of tomorrow, the Libya we all dream of. Because if we don't, Libyans, you must be ready, for there will be conflict. We will be fighting each other. Forget about the oil and gas. We will fall into chaos and disarray.
Well, let's now speak to Michael Singh. He's a former senior director for Middle East Affairs at the U.S. National Security Council. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Mr. Singh. So Saif al-Islam there raising the prospect of a civil war in Libya, the prospect of separation between the East and West. Is that where we're headed, do you think?
Well, it's too soon to tell. I mean, certainly the remarks that Saif al-Islam delivered were harsh and somewhat threatening. And I don't think that they had the tone or the content that the West or Washington would like to see. I think that what we hope to see in such remarks would be a more positive response to the really legitimate demands that the protesters have. And of course, paired with the violence that we've seen on the streets, it's very concerning to see this sort of speech.
You mentioned Washington there. In the last few hours, the State Department has come out and said that they're, observing the situation. They're watching it very carefully. At this stage, is there any more Washington or the Europeans, for that matter, can do?
Well, I think that the first thing that the Europeans and Washington will be doing is reaching out to Saif al-Islam and to the Libyans to clarify exactly what they have in mind. When they talk about consultations or a new system, what sort of responses to the protests they have in mind. But clearly there is pressure that can be brought to bear on the Libyan regime. We saw positive pressure brought to bear in Bahrain, where the good relationship that Bahrain has with the West was used to convince them to stand down, and the violence that was used in Pearl Roundabout. Libya depends upon its trade with Europe and with the United States. for the prosperity of the regime, and that certainly gives the West leverage over the regime.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Singh, for speaking to us there live from Washington, D.C. The sole surviving gunman of the 2008 Mumbai attacks will hear later on Monday if his death sentence has been lifted. Mohammed Ajmal Amir Kasab was found guilty in May for his part in a wave of attacks which killed 166 people and injured more than 300 others. But his lawyers appealed, saying they weren't given enough time to read the 11,000 pages charge sheet at the beginning of the case. Germany's ruling party has suffered a crushing defeat in a key regional election. The result means the opposition Social Democrats now have control of the country's upper house of parliament. And the poll may also spell more trouble for Chancellor Angela Merkel's party going into 6 more local elections this year. Nick Spicer reports from Hamburg.
They voted even though the outcome was almost a foregone conclusion. The only surprise, the size of the upset. The Social Democrats were sipping champagne even before the official results were in. Then came the long, hard walk for this man, the Christian Democratic candidate, come to meet his disappointed followers.
He's conceding defeat. Angela Merkel's man in Hamburg, Christoph Allhaus, the mayor, defeated by the Social Democratic candidate. The issues were largely local, such as dredging the port, but the consequences could be national.
Olaf Scholz was the man of the moment, touring the TV sets and telling us what the Hamburg victory meant for his party nationwide.
I think this is a good sign for the whole country, because we can see here that the Social Democratic Party is a big party, and a party which is pragmatic and is able to combine economic competence and social cohesion.
This is the kickoff to at least 7 regional elections this year, a bad start for the party of the German Chancellor. Nick Spicer, Al Jazeera, Hamburg.
In other world news, 10 disabled children have died in a fire at an orphanage in Estonia. The blaze broke out in a wooden building in Haapsalu when 37 children and 2 adults were inside. Many were wheelchair-bound and unable to escape the flames. Estonia will mark the tragedy with a day of mourning on Monday. More than 50 people have been killed over the past 3 days in the Mexican town of Ciudad Juarez. That's according to officials there, who say 14 people were killed on Thursday, 20 on Friday, and a further 19 on Saturday. Ciudad Juarez is just across the border from Texas, a frontier that's become a battleground for drug cartels and security forces. And violence continues in other parts of Mexico. A series of attacks on taxis in the western resort city of Acapulco has left 12 people dead. Police say drivers and passengers were among the victims. Hundreds of people have packed the Capitol building in the U.S. state of Wisconsin in an ongoing budget standoff. Wisconsin's governor wants union members to contribute more to ease the state's money troubles, but protesters are upset that he wants to eliminate collective bargaining rights. John Terrett reports from Wisconsin's state capital, Madison.
Late Sunday evening, and several hundred people are protesting Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker's plans to cut